because you can't just do one little phone call and talk about habits and have everyone go, oh, okay, I get it. I've mastered my habits. So we're going to talk about, this is habits part 2. All right. How many of you had a chance when we spoke a couple weeks ago to identify the 3 parts in the cycle of your habit formation? You have a cue, you have a routine, and that leads to a reward. Yeah? If you remember my my PowerPoint, it entailed 1 slide. So if you had a chance to do that, did anybody have a chance to first identify some of the cues that lead to your habits? Anyone? Did you talk about that? Did you work on your habits? Did you just, hello? Is my is this on? Come in over. Yeah, if you do this, the suggestions I'm giving you, you are smart. If you don't, then you won't do as well. Okay, so there's a simple formula. Be coachable, follow suggestions, and you'll do well. All right, so my notes keep closing on me, so I'm going to have to probably just go from scratch here. But this is habits part 2, your chunking, craving brain. Okay, our brains love to find shortcuts. So I have a question for you. I'm going to be reading from my hymnal today, The Power of Habit. If anybody was really smart, you went and purchased this, but it's a really interesting book, and I want to share it with you here. Just a couple. So here's my questions to you. When you woke up this morning, what did you do first? Did you hop in the shower? Did you check the email on your phone? Did you grab a donut from the kitchen counter? Think about it. What happened? Step by step. Did you brush your teeth before or after you toweled off from the shower? You're like, wait a minute, I don't even think about this. That's the point. What did you say to your partner or your kids or your roommate as you went out the door? Or did you say anything to them? Which route did you take to work? That's something to think about. When you got to your desk at LGFG, did you deal with email? Did you talk to your office mates? Or did you just jump into phone calls or writing a memo to somebody? When you ate lunch today, if it's in the evening, did you order a salad, order a hamburger, order some taco? What did you do? This is all part of habits. When you got home, did you put on your trainers and go for a run? Or did you pour yourself a drink? Or did you just veg out in front of the TV? So very few people analyze that cycle of habits. They don't think about cues. They don't think about routines. They don't think about the reward at the end of a habit. But our brains function to find little pathways that it can take and make life easier. And what I thought was interesting from reading parts of this book were the fact that habits don't just apply to individuals, they apply to organizations. They apply to cultures and nations. And Charles Duhigg, the guy got interested in habits when he was a reporter right before the Iraq War. If you remember, back in I think in the 90s that happened, right? So he went over to observe the military and how it operated, because the military, at least the American military, is like a massive, automated, industrialized, habit-forming machine. They teach you how to react under fire. They teach you how to, all the habits to put together a gun, take it apart, how to clean it, how to sleep under fire. Everything is habits. So he went in as a military reporter to observe what was occurring on the streets in a little town in Iraq, because they were having uprisings. They would have, the people would gather in the square, and then after a while, there would be unrest, and then suddenly fights would break out. Somebody throw a bottle, and it was out of control, and the unstable Iraqi government would call not only their police, but also the US military to come in and kind of quell these massive riots that took place. Well, what he did was he went in and interviewed one of the colonels that was in charge of the US military. And this guy was a habit master. And he watched videotapes of how these riots occurred. And what he found was that all these hundreds of mostly young men would gather in the square in the afternoon. And the crowds would grow and they would grow and it would get hotter and it would get hotter and they would grow and grow. And then in order to make money, food vendors would show up. So guys would be pushing carts and selling chicken and probably not hot dogs, but just little things that people could buy and eat and drink on their way to having a riot. It's kind of interesting. So as he watched how this occurred, this colonel said, he got with the mayor and he said, next time that we have a feedback that one of these potential riots is going to occur, here's what I want you to do. I want you just to ask that your food vendors not come. Tell them not to show up. Do not come with food and drink. So what happened was about 3 weeks later, young men started forming the square. They're like, word got out and, they're calling friends and they're all building and there was a little bit of tension. And then they realized we're hungry late in the afternoon, but no one's showing up to feed us. And guess what? They dissipated by 8 o'clock that night. No riots. Okay. So here's what happened. You go, well, that's really interesting. Think about it. There was a queue, food vendors. The reward was, it was a cycle, a habit that not individuals adopted, but an entire group of people. All right. LGFG has habits. And if you change your cue, remember, if you find out what's my cue that starts this, you can change your entire loop. Or if you find out what's my reward, how am I rewarding myself for this behavior? It's really, really interesting, I think. So most of us, again, don't even pay attention to our habits. Experts would say that about 40% of what most people do during the day is autopilot habit. You don't even think about it. Okay. Like, how many of you know how to drive a car? Okay. This is for participation purposes. Yeah. When you first started driving a car, for me, it was, I think when I was 14 and 15 and just getting my learner's permit, you sat in a car and I had a stick shift. A lot of you may have an automatic at this point, but I had to learn how to use a stick shift. So I sat in the car and I figured out, okay, the key goes in here and I've got to turn the ignition. Oh yeah. And I got to push down the clutch, hold the brake too, so I don't do anything crazy. Oh, and I got to check my mirrors, right? Remember that? And all the you have to adjust your seat, make sure that's okay. It's like when you get in a rental car, a car you hire when you're in another city, you want to make sure you kind of get everything organized before you drive off. And that takes you out of your normal habit loop. So now what happens when you get in a car? You're just like, and you can drive out, you pull out of the driveway, you don't have to notice a lot of stuff. You don't hit the garage, but your brain automatically can shift to other things because it's going through this loop. Your brain has chunked habits together to save time and effort. Okay, does that make sense? So if your brain didn't do that every time you came back from vacation after having not driven for a week or two, you would have to relearn how to use the car and where to put the keys and how to put it in reverse and all that stuff. So we're very fast learners. Our brain's constantly looking for ways to save effort, and that works for us and against us. So as you change habits and try to improve what you're doing, your brain is chunking. That's a word for today. Chunking. It's converting a set of actions into a sequence, like an automatic routine. All right? So in the morning, I thought about this today because I was getting ready for the call. In the morning, my morning is chunked. First, one or two of the dogs comes and starts wagging the tail, and she jumps on the bed and sits on my chest, and that is my alarm clock. And so that is a cue for me to get up, wander downstairs, feed the dogs, okay? Then I come back up, I floss, I do, you know, put fruit in a blender, drink it, spend time quietly reading, then I go work out. So, I mean, that is my chunked sequence. And if I don't do that sequence, that I don't know if you've ever done something like out of sequence. Like I remember one time going to work and I had gotten my morning routine out of sync. I did something out of its normal chunked behavior and realized I was halfway to work and I hadn't shaved. So I had on a tie and everything and I'm going, yeah, I'm feeling all corporate. And then I reach out and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a grizzled beard because I did a couple of the steps out of order. All right. So I want you to be aware of your habits, and you have to interrupt your sequence if you're having a bad habit. A habit, I got to tell you, can form without our permission. Hello. Your habits can form without your permission. Let me give you an example. A young family with a couple little kids, say they have mom is running late and she's tired and she's worked all day and she picks up the kids from school and the kids are hungry and she says, you know what, I don't have time for dinner, so what am I going to do? Oh my gosh, there's McDonald's. Okay, all of you are familiar with McDonald's. So let me tell you kind of how this works. I'm going to read from the book on this because I think it's a good example. It says, okay, kids are starving, you're driving home from work and you decide to stop just this once at McDonald's or Burger King. The meals are relatively inexpensive. It tastes good. After all, one dose of processed meat, salty fries, and sugary soda poses a really small health risk, right? So it's not like you do it all the time. So she pulls into the drive-through window, right? And here's the deal. Every McDonald's looks the same. The company deliberately tries to standardize the store's architecture and what employees say to customers. They're creating a habit loop. So everything is consistent to cue a trigger for eating, right? The foods at some chains are specifically engineered to deliver immediate rewards. Like, for example, McDonald's, the fries are designed to disintegrate the minute they hit your tongue in order to deliver a hit of salt and grease as fast as possible, causing your pleasure centers in your brain to boop, 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 those they light up, and your brain to lock onto the pattern, all tightening this habit loop. Okay, so that's how it works. And you know, here's what happens though. These habits are delicate. It's not like you go to McDonald's twice, but families will notice that we go once a month, and then guess what? It's so easy and it's cheap and the kids like it. I'll just do it twice a month. Then it turns out to be once a week, and it becomes a firmer and firmer habit. Now, these can be broken if you just remove the cue. Like if a McDonald's were to close down, which is probably not possible, but if it did, that cue's removed and people will just, you know, find somewhere else to eat, or they'll start eating dinner together at home. Okay? So you can extinguish a bad habit because they can be delicate. Now, some habits get super ingrained, and that's what we call cravings. That's our other word for the day. So we got chunking. That's where your brain looks for shortcuts. And we got cravings. All right? How many of you know what cravings are about just from the word? Yeah? Have you ever craved something? It doesn't have to be something evil, but you just developed a craving for something, right? Like, do you guys in Europe and the Philippines or wherever you are, do you have Cinnabon stores in airports? You know what that is? Jason knows what that is. Yeah, it's a store that makes one item, and they are huge cinnamon rolls with glazed icing on the top, and they do not put Cinnabon stores near any of the other food stores. So if you're walking through a mall here in the States, I hope you can someday. It's such a treat. And then you smell this waft of cinnamon hitting you in the face. You're like, whoa, what is that? They actually have fans that blow the scent, the aroma of those yummy, sweet, sugary, sweet rolls out into the people that walk by. So they're like, oh, that's a cue. Wonder what that is. Oh, wow, look at the size of those rolls. Reward, that would taste great. And they go in, right? And they start a craving. So I think it's really interesting. You smell that store before you see it, and that creates a subconscious craving. And when you turn the corner, you're just kind of reaching into your wallet if you don't have any discipline. So cravings drive our habit loops. And when your brain starts expecting the reward, then it gets automatic. Okay? Last week or 2 weeks ago when we talked, some of you mentioned smoking. And when a smoker sees a pack of cigarettes, that's a cue. Or if you you get that craving for a hit of nicotine, and you don't sit down and go, you know what, I really would enjoy some nicotine right now. You don't think about that. You walk into a pub and one of your mates lights up a cigarette, cue, and you're like, oh man, and you're like, well, it's a social thing. I'm with my friends. Here we go. And so all these things are just autopilot. Give you an example that might affect work. On Facebook, you might see, or when you hear that little chime, bing, might not be Facebook, anything, any social media, Instagram, whatever. When you hear that chime of a new notification, your brain starts anticipating that little momentary distraction, you know? It's like, oh, somebody needs me. And that's a habit. The reward is, oh, let me see what's going on. Let me find out what's, oh, there it is. So when you hear that little chime or that little, whatever notification you've got set up, your brain starts anticipating, if you're at work, a distraction that opening the message provides. Okay? So let me see if I've got something. I thought I had a note here. There's something else interesting I wanted to read to you about that, but it may not be. Right. Forget it. It's not a big deal. So I would recommend how could you change a habit of being distracted at work? Turn off notifications. That's easy, right? So switch off the notification aspect on your phone, and then you won't be tempted to exit. All right. So that's kind of what, this, a lot of this call is review, but I want you to, again, think about what are some of the good habits you've developed. I started thinking about my habits, so I brought a visual aid, which I don't usually do. But I thought to myself, I'm old enough that the habit of swimming with the Masters swim team, I mean, it's getting harder to wake up in the morning and go swim, work out hard for 2 hours with people mostly younger than me. So I thought, what is my habit on Monday, Wednesday, Friday that I just make it a point, no matter how I feel? What's my pattern? And I thought, you know what? One of the ways I've created a reward is I don't sit around think, how many of you have worked out and when you're done, you feel good because you got endorphins flowing through your brain. You're like, yeah, I'm tired, but I feel good, right? Well, I decided to reinforce my habit of keeping swimming, even though I'm definitely aging, by buying cool equipment. See? So I've got like Michael Phelps crap. Not that I could get in the same pool with him, but I've got some killer Speedo goggles, and you're like, well, that's not a big deal. I also have some Swedish goggles. But anyway, I have all kinds of cool equipment, but the best of all, I figured out this is my reward, is this device, which is an MP3 player with 4,000 rock tunes on it, and it attaches to my goggles. So guess what? What I used to hate when I was working out when I was a kid, And I was up through high school. I would hate just doing laps and flip turns and pushing off, and your brain's just kind of going all over the place, or you get a bad song stuck in your head. Anybody had that happen? Bad song. So I thought, I'm going to get this device, load 4,000 songs into it, and then when I'm swimming, I can hear music. Now the coach hates it because when I come to the wall, she's like, and I'm like, oh, hold on, click, and I have to pause it, and then she talks. But that is my reward, you know? And you're like, well, that's not much of a reward. Yes, it is. It doesn't have to take much of a reward to start a habit or to reinforce a habit you want. So my questions to you, what are some of the good habits you've developed? I want you to break them down and think about them because you want to reinforce those. And try to pick 1 or 2 bad habits that you're going to replace. For some of you, it would be like we said 2 weeks ago, just change the routine. When you feel that craving coming on or that, oh, there's my cue, do something violently different than what you do to break that habit pattern, right? So I remember Tony Robbins talked about, gosh, what was it? He was working with some women who were overweight. And so he gave them a really crazy idea to interrupt their pattern of habits. Because their habit was eat together, socialize, yay, have a good time, order dessert. And dessert was not in their goal plan. So he told this one lady that what she should do, and she did this, and it definitely interrupted her pattern, was as she was eating or she was looking at a dessert, to just, in the middle of the restaurant, to just jump up, point at the plate, and yell, pig! And everybody would stop in the restaurant and look at her and go, oh my, what an odd person. And so that completely destroyed her loop, her habit loop, because she changed the routine that led to the reward, which was stuffing her face with cake. Okay? So you have to think, what are some of my bad habits, you know, that I want to change? Let's interrupt the pattern, right? Simple. So my assignment to you guys is I want you to, if you didn't last time especially do this, but to share and break down, think of 1 or 2 habits, share them with people on your team if they're not too, you know, out there. Like I'm in the habit of killing people. That would be a bad thing, first of all, to have as a habit, and second, to probably share with the group. But you need to, if that happens, someone call the police. But, you know, pick a habit that's benign that you can share with the group and talk about how you can change. How can you notice and incorporate habit patterns into your business? All right. So I'm going to open it up for suggestions. My little quote here from Robert Collier, because I always have to give you a quote. He said, success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in, day out. That's success. Little efforts. Okay. Anybody have, did anyone replace a habit or work on a habit? Or talk about a habit? Some of you've changed habits and you're selling a lot more.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you find new cues? If you want to bring in new habits, how do you look for those new cues?
Somebody give a suggestion for that.
Will you say it one more time, Charles?
So we were talking a lot about breaking old habits by changing the routine when you notice your cue. But what about if you want to build a new habit? How do you define a new cue to start the routine, then get the reward out of that?
That's a good question. What's the new habit you want to start? And it takes, is it 3 weeks of repetition?
Yeah, that would be our standard response. But the fact is, you can have one experience and you're like, whoa, that's so cool. You know, like you get off a roller coaster again. I mean, it can be a big deal and get ingrained fast, you know? It's different for each person. But yeah, 3 weeks, if you were to do something, yes.
I think that answered the question.
Well,
Yeah.
it could, but here's the deal, Charles. You have to think, okay, what do I want to change? And if I do make a change, what's the payoff? What's the reward? I think I would start with that. And then anything can be a cue. You know, when I was in sales, I put quotes, inspirational quotes in my car in between appointments so that I would read an inspirational quote and go, you know, and that would remind me of what I was doing. You know, some people you've created vision boards. So that vision board is like, okay, that's a cue to remind me of my purpose. Right? So it's super easy, but you can be really creative with it. It can be an auditory cue, like a sound. It can be a word. It can be something you see, or it can be a situation. Like I was talking about the guys who smoke together socially. That's a cue. It's like, hey, I'm with my buddies. Got to light up. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Lee. I don't really have a question, but I'm just getting a lot of ads on YouTube about a guy, and his program is called like Mind Valley or something. It's just a guy with a beard, and it's also like a self-help program. But he's like saying that I really hate this bullshit idea that you have to work hard to achieve stuff in life. And then he's talking about bending reality and stuff. It's just really interesting.
Yeah.
Have you heard about him? And I would like really love your take on it. And if this is a scam or just a new way to sell self-help books and stuff, but like really interesting. And then there are like a lot of courses, they go into sleep patterns and like basically all the stuff we're doing here, but like almost backwards.
Okay. Well, I have not heard of that individual, but if he has a beard and he tells you that there's an easy path to victory, then I would believe him. No, you can always check it out. I mean, that's how people sell books, because of a cool title, like The Fine Art of Not Giving a F, or whatever that book was. Everybody's like, yeah, I know that helped.
4-hour work week.
Yeah, I mean, that's a classic. People are going to go, that is the way forward. And I'm not saying our goal in life is just to grind ourselves into the dust with work and never take time off. But I'm saying if you want to sell books, you kind of come up with a cool title or a different twist on things. So if somebody said, it's all BS, this hard work thing, I'll share some secrets. I would just be wary, but you can always click around and, you know, check reviews. But I haven't heard of him. I can't help. Good question, though.
Yeah, I'll send you a link just for interest. I mean, it's like competition, right, for you.
Yeah, I may just quit working altogether and become eminently successful. But for sure, I'll grow a beard. All right. Anybody else have a thought? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Well, I'm going to be talking to you every 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, that's the new schedule. Jason and I talked about it. So in 2 weeks, feel free to tune in again on a Monday at this time, and we'll have another leadership call with Lee. And I will close the call by playing a song that I opened the call with by a gentleman named Still Woozy. And it's called Habit. So have a great week. We'll talk to you in 2. You guys are champions. Keep it up.